So, the elephant in the room. By the way, I'm really bad at anything to do with style. I've made great use today of Gemini's new capability in Google presentation to generate some images for me, but you have to forgive the style. So the elephant in the room, my fourth bullet point, this one here, exponentially more valuable. Is it realistic to make your business exponentially more valuable? Is it realistic for someone like me to come in and say I can make someone else's business exponentially more valuable? I mean, let's first of all consider the definition of exponential. Something becoming more and more rapid. So I'm saying, can we actually make the value of your business grow more and more rapidly? I mean, just think about that for a moment. How long have you been running your businesses for? What's the growth look like? Does that sound plausible, or does it sound like I am having a laugh? Well, what we're going to go through in this talk is my playbook, which is designed to do just that. Hopefully, at the end of it, you guys will have a few ideas that you could take away and have a go. The playbook has got 4 pillars: consolidate, integrate, automate, and innovate. Came with this nice diagram to demonstrate that although they do follow naturally in that sequence, there is going to be a degree of iteration as well. You don't just have to follow that sequence, and once you're done in one phase, you forget about it and move on to the next. You can keep going round and round and round and round, and indeed you should do. Before I get into the pillars, I wanted to share a quote from one of my favorite social media accounts, The Secret CFO. You have to excuse the bad language. He says, smart folk with big ideas can fuck up an operation that's running well through hubris and over enthusiasm. Now that's pretty key to my talk, because those big ideas that he's talking about, well, in my world, that's the transformations and innovations that I encourage businesses to undertake. But priority number 1 is core business improvements. So the big ideas, they can be a game changer, but we don't want to break the business pursuing them. And there's a couple of key points here. We don't want to divert so much cash to our innovations and transformations that we suffocate the core business. But equally, we don't want to divert too much of our team's time to delivering those innovations to the extent that the core business suffers there as well. So that's a pretty key thing. Okay, I'm absolutely in favor of innovations and transformations. If I wasn't, I wouldn't be here today, but you've got to look after the core business. So we spoke a moment ago about the presentation of return on investment. And I'm a firm believer that your technology investments should deliver a strong ROI. Now, the playbook that I gave a moment ago had those 4 parts, and I think we can split it into 2 broad sections. There's the consolidate, integrate, automate phases, which they will tend to be your lower risk initiatives with more predictable returns that tend to focus on just getting the company running well. We've then got the innovate phase, and that's where we have less certain returns, something innovative. Well, we haven't done it before. We're breaking some new ground, and maybe we're not quite sure how it's going to go. So there's some uncertainty there. But in exchange for taking on that uncertainty, we want the opportunity to earn uncapped returns. That's what makes the innovations interesting. But first of all, from a defensive point of view, the little pie chart at the bottom there is just trying to demonstrate that the majority of your investments should be going into making the core business better. We don't want to bet the house on moonshots, but we do want to have a little bit of investment into those innovative opportunities. Now, I'm not really breaking new ground with this approach. Gartner, the industry analysts, they talk about it as a bimodal strategy. They describe it as the practice of managing 2 separate but coherent styles of work, one focused on predictability, the other on exploration. And then there's the author, trader, mathematician, I think he wants to be a philosopher as well, Nassim Nicholas Taleb. He describes something similar as his barbell strategy, a combination of extremes kept separate with avoidance of the middle. And it's that avoiding investing in the middle, which is the key point I wanted to make on this slide. Because if we invest in the middle, then we risk taking on maybe significant risk and uncertainty, but without the opportunity to earn those stellar rewards or those uncapped rewards. And the problem that gives is unless you're really accurate at measuring cost, benefit in an uncertain environment, just increases your chances of taking on projects with a negative return on investment just because your estimations weren't 100%. And as we all know, estimations on IT projects are notorious to get wrong. So that's the key point here. You want to avoid investing in the middle. We've got most of our investment going into core business improvements and then a small part of it going into these opportunities for innovation with uncapped returns. So phase one, consolidate. We're laying a solid foundation for your business. There's a whole bunch of bullet points on here. I'm not going to read them all out. I'm just going to pick a couple that stood out to me. Bespoke software that is not fit for purpose. There can be loads of reasons for this. It may be that you asked the development team to build the wrong thing. It may be that a development team misunderstood what you wanted and built the wrong thing. It could be that the development team fundamentally built the right thing, but not in a very good way, so the software is not very good. Could even just be that what was built was great, but the business has changed, and that software is no longer fit for purpose given the processes that the business has today. So there's a whole load of reasons why software might not be fit for purpose. Another one I've highlighted, customized enterprise software that has become so cumbersome and unstable that nobody wants to touch it. I mean, this one's a great one. Whether it's CRMs, ERPs, any other kind of enterprise software, they'll come with a ton of features out the box. And then before buying, someone will say, oh yeah, but can it do X, Y, and Z? Maybe there'll be a conversation about whether it should or whether it shouldn't, but let's skip that part of it. The vendor will just say, yeah, we can do it because you can add your own code to extend the system, which is fine. You get your new functionality. Except over time, when that happens, you end up with a load of shadow code baked into these systems, which is outside your developers' core ways of working, outside their core tool set. And over time, it becomes really difficult to manage. No one knows what to touch. They don't want to touch it. They don't know what will happen if they do touch it. It can make upgrading quite difficult if the upgrade path doesn't have backwards compatibility. And it can also make it very difficult to switch because you've probably invested a ton of time and money into building capability into this proprietary platform. And then the other one I highlighted was just poor data that frustrates customers and team members alike. If you've got poor data internally, and actually this is a good way for spotting if you've got data internally, if you've got teams that have spreadsheet after spreadsheet after spreadsheet, which is there just to reconcile that the data matches what it's supposed to say because they don't trust the data when it comes out of a core system, that causes loads of wasted time, especially if then work has to be done to correct that data. And similarly for customers, if they're giving you your data, but then when you're getting in touch with them, it's as if you don't know what data they've shared with them previously, or maybe it's inaccurate, maybe you've got duplicate data, whatever it is, that's going to frustrate them as well. So consolidate phase, solid foundation, get your house in order. Obviously there's a few more things on the bullets as well. Okay, action. What do we do in the consolidate phase? Get your team on board. You want to improve your ways of working. You want to figure out where there might be friction, pain points between teams, things that aren't working very well. Get things like that addressed. Get a set of standards, a way of working, what's expected from different team members, what does good look like? And then you want to get your team excited about where they're actually going to end up once they've gone through this process. They're going to be able to move beyond some of those challenges and frustrations that they currently have and towards a future which is more efficient and more pleasant to work in. We've got business analysis. You need to know what your essential processes are. You also need to know how good those processes are. We might come on to it later, I think, but you might not want to keep all of those processes. Some of them you might want to chuck them in the bin. Some of your good processes you might want to automate. We'll come back to that in a bit. You also need to audit your hardware, your systems, your data sets. You need to know what you've got, where is it, do you need it, what does it cost you, who supports it, is it end of life, all of those sorts of things. You've got to cross-reference all of your business processes with your IT estate. Are they well aligned? Do you have gaps? Is it fit for purpose, etc.? You want to eliminate waste. If you're wasting time because you've got inefficient communications with a development team or inefficient testing processes or whatever it might be, you've got wasted time there. It may be that you've got wasted money if you're paying for infrastructure that you don't need, or even if your bespoke software that we spoke about earlier on, if it's not fit for purpose, you might find you spending a load of money wrestling with it rather than improving it. So you want to get rid of that waste. If you're using outsourced vendors, I find that a few well-managed vendors tends to be more effective than a sprawling estate, each with a very narrow focus. If you've got risks like unstable software, maybe you don't know what your cybersecurity posture looks like, or you've got pain points, people are moaning about things which are always breaking, they're the sorts of things we need to get tightened up in this consolidate phase. And I think I mentioned optimizing spend a moment ago. Right, how are we doing for time? Right, I need to speed up a little bit. I know I need to speed up, but does anyone have any questions before I move on to the next phase? Okay, in which case I'll keep going. At the end of this consolidate phase, you should be looking for your business to have increased agility, a clean foundation that you're not afraid to build on top of, eliminated wasted spend, and time savings. You should have more efficient processes, cleaner IT estate, fewer vendors. That cuts down on management time in quite a few places. Phase 2, integration, letting the data flow between your IT systems. Companies grow, so do their IT estates. It might be that you're growing through acquisition, or it may just be that over time you use new systems to take advantage of modern capabilities. Bottom line is, over time, IT estates grow, they get more complex. Unless you're intentional about things, the data will tend to sit in silos for each of the systems that you've got. As your data volumes grow, often your data quality declines. Often that's because you're manually recreating data between your various different systems, and it doesn't always get recreated perfectly. The problem that you can face is that your data can end up being a liability and not an asset. And remember, we're trying to exponentially grow the value of your business. We need to leverage all of the assets that we can here. Data is a key one of those. And as I put at the end there, the problem with this is that it can snowball. The bigger these problems get, the harder they are to solve. So challenges with integrating your system. If you've got a business that's been around for 20 years, 10 years, maybe even 5 years, you've got systems that were designed fundamentally differently. The different ages, they've got different data formats. They've got a different capacity for serving usage volume. They're just different in many, many ways. You've likely got different data validation standards across all of those systems. You might even have different constraints in terms of uniqueness. And by that, I mean, how do you uniquely identify a customer in one system? Is that the same in your other systems? So what do we need to do if we want to integrate our systems? I'd say, first of all, you want to start by getting some agreed data standards across your organization, which you can apply across your enterprise systems, because that will allow you to improve your data quality. Now, shift left, bit of tech terminology that most of you guys will have never heard of previously. Shift left means try and address any data issues as early as possible in your data life cycle. So shift them left in your process, make it happen earlier. That will just mean that you spend less time remediating things downstream, and generally it will improve the quality of your data. You're going to need to choose integration tooling. There's loads of options here. You've got those which require code to be written. There's low code platforms, no code platforms, ones that are for the enterprise, one for SMEs, ones which would be good for in-house development, ones which would be better for outsourced development. And you want to make sure you choose the one that's right for your business, so you get the best blend of capability, cost, and various other factors. One of those being citizen integrators. So are there people in your business, non-technical people in your business, who would like to be able to move data from one system to another? That's the idea of a citizen integrator. They can do it without having to go back to a developer. So at the end of the integrate phase, you should have eliminated your data silos. You should have more valuable data that you can use to drive top line growth. And you should have improved data quality to cut errors, reduce waste of time, and enhance customer experience. Now, the main thing that we've done through that integrate phase is to lay a foundation for being able to automate. There's so many things that you could automate. On the slide, I've just given 4 examples of automations that you could implement. For example, that automate an employee onboarding or offboarding process. That might have employee records in HR systems, on your Microsoft account, in a CRM account, a Google Ads account, whatever it might be. If you have a high number of staff, automating onboarding and offboarding could be a big time saver, but it could also improve accuracy. But any business process is a candidate for automation. But first, audit the process. If you automate a bad process, you've still got a bad process. And what you don't want to do is automate a process which simply means you're able to generate bad data more quickly or produce bad outcomes more quickly. So we start by automating the process. Now, I don't advocate automating everything. And the reason for that, firstly, as we said, we don't want to automate a bad process, but sometimes even a good process shouldn't be automated. And the reason for that is automation isn't free. You're going to get cost in several places. That cost could come from upfront technical design, which involves many people. They could all be doing something else. There's a cost there. Professional services, if you need to pay someone to actually do the integration. The integration will need to be tested. Multi-system testing is often complex, again, involving multiple people. You've got to operationalize it. Someone's going to have to check that the integration is actually working. And if data doesn't end up in a target system, why not? Who's going to fix it and how? And then you may have license fees for integration software. So automation costs money. And that means you only want to do it when there's a solid business case. When you're looking at that business case, it's really easy just to think about the amount of time you're going to save a person. But I think you also need to think about other sources of value. There's value in having more accurate data. There's value in improving staff morale by cutting out monotonous, boring work. That can lead into better staff retention, helps on your hiring costs. There's also opportunity costs. If people aren't just doing repetitive work, they could be freed up to do higher value work. But you also need to be able to measure these things. You need to measure it because you need to be able to test your assumptions, course correct, celebrate success, and ideally accelerate your automations, do more of them. Okay, right, I'm going to skip through the next bit because I need to get to the final slide here. Phase 4 is innovation. This is where we want to make those asymmetric investments that I was speaking about earlier on, where we've got uncapped rewards. Now, operational efficiencies, you can only squeeze so far, so they're not really uncapped. Most operational efficiency gains, they're not going to meet the bill of asymmetric investments. What we're looking for is things that could grow top line revenue, where we could sell more to existing customers, expand our reach to new markets, potentially disrupt our business model, do things in a fundamentally different way. This slide is really just giving you some starting points, how you might start to think about innovations. How might we be able to turn that data into an asset, like I was talking about earlier on? Like, actually, maybe we could use it in a completely different way to a completely different set of markets. Maybe our software could be of value to a different type of customer. Maybe we can just produce higher value services so that we can upsell and drive revenue by on-demand services, subscription-based services. And then the final one is just with a blank canvas. How could we serve customers today if we just thought about what we could do with modern technology? Would that be an improvement? Are there any opportunities there? Okay. Now, I'm going to skip to the final slide because this now comes back to that question I posed at the beginning. Like, is it reasonable to say we can exponentially increase the value of a business? What I've tried to do in this chart, bearing in mind the limitations of my stylistic capabilities, is indicate with the black line along the bottom some EBITDA for a company which is just gradually growing. The dotted black line is trying to indicate that as the business grows, the dotted line goes up a little more steeply than the solid line, because as the business grows, the valuation multiple is likely to grow as well. The solid orange line is saying, if we apply the playbook and we are able to make the business more efficient through technology and more profitable through driving top line growth, then we'll have a larger EBITDA. With the dotted orange line, what we're saying is, if we make the business bigger through driven revenue, and we make it more profitable because we made it more efficient, and we're making it more scalable because the tech would tend to scale better than the people, then as we add all of those things, we're likely to see the valuation multiple that would be applied to the business grow quicker as well. So the exponential growth comes from the fact that there's the opportunity for us to apply a larger multiple to a larger, more profitable business. And that is where I'm going to conclude my talk. Apologies for having to run through some of that very quickly, but we're already almost out of time. So let me pause there and invite you guys to ask any questions, share any comments, or just deliver any feedback you may want to deliver.